Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about strict mode in JavaScript. So to get started, if you go ahead and go into your project folder, if you go ahead and go into the 34-strict mode folder and the start subfolder, if you can open up main.js. Then in your browser, if you go ahead and open up the index.html page, you should see strict mode written to the page. So strict mode in JavaScript is a way for us to tell browsers to execute our code under strict requirements. And this was originally not part of JavaScript when it was first released and was added in a newer version. And the great thing about strict mode is when we enable it, it's not treated as a statement in our code, it's treated as a literal expression. So it's going to be ignored by all earlier versions of JavaScript, which means we can use it now and not worry about it breaking in earlier versions of JavaScript. So you might be wondering why you might want to use strict mode. And the main reason for it is it allows us to write more secure JavaScript. And one of the reasons strict mode was introduced was because previously with JavaScript we could have bad syntax, and this could lead to real errors in your code. So to see an example of this, I'm going to go ahead and make a variable called apples. And I'm going to go ahead and set it to 1. And now let's say I want to go ahead and update my apples variable, but I go AP les equals 2. So now if I do a console log, and I go ahead and log apples, and I'm going to do console log, I'm going to go ahead and log the misspelling, and you'll see that JavaScript creates a brand new variable called APLES and assigns that value to it. And right now this isn't a problem in our code, but let's say if I was reliant on this being set to 2. So if apples equals 2, they want to go ahead and console log this worked. So if we go ahead and save and refresh, you'll see that this console statement never gets logged. And that's because JavaScript is accepting this as valid syntax, even though this is a misspelling on my part as a developer. So what we can do is we can enable strict mode, and we do that by adding one line of code at the start of our scope. So we just do use strict. So now, if I go ahead and save and refresh, you'll see right away we get an error when our code goes to execute, and that's because we're referencing a variable that does not exist, and it's apples. And this is fantastic as a developer because now I can easily come in and replace my bad variable name with the proper variable name, and then I can go ahead and get rid of my console log, and you'll see if we save and refresh, my code's working as I expect it to. So as I mentioned, you can go ahead and declare strict mode in the scope that you wanted available. So for example, right now we're doing strict mode in global scope, and we could easily change it to local scope by using strict mode just inside a function. So as an example, let me go ahead and comment this out, and I'm going to go ahead and do apples equals 2, and then I'm going to come down here, I'm going to go ahead and do function test, and then in my function I'm going to go ahead and do use strict. And then I will try creating another variable that I've not declared yet. So if I go ahead and save and refresh, you'll see right now I have no errors in my code. And the reason for that is because strict mode is not enabled in the global scope, so this is accepted. However, if I come down here and now I call my test function, we should get an error, and we do, because now that test is invoked, strict mode is enabled for my function scope, and apples 3 has not been defined, so I do get an error. So one other thing I want to call out is when you use strict, it needs to be placed at the beginning of your script or at the beginning of a function. Otherwise, it will not be recognized and you'll encounter some errors. So to see an example, if I take this and I place it down here below my apples, and if I go ahead and save and refresh, you'll see that my function now does not operate under strict mode, and I'm able to do this line of code here. One other thing I want to call out is when you enable strict mode, by default, if there's any keywords that are currently reserved for future versions of JavaScript, you will not be able to use those names. So for example, right now if I do var and I do public, and I go ahead and set it equal to 123, we should be able to save and our code should be fine. However, if we go ahead and enable strict mode, we save and refresh, and we now get an error because strict is a reserved keyword. So this is important to know because it allows us to write JavaScript now that will work in the future and we don't have to worry about it. So as I mentioned, strict mode is stricter requirements when running our code. So there are many more things that you are not allowed to do. However, we will not be covering all of those in this video since that is a very large topic.